The wind howled across the frozen surface of 4, carrying ice and snow in sheets so thick that could barely see 10 meters ahead. She pulled her thermal coat tighter and stepped out of the research station, her boots crunching against the hard ground. Something had broken into her supply shed last night. She had heard the noise but thought it was just the wind. Now, in the pale morning light of the distant sun, she could see the damage. The metal door hung from one hinge, deep scratches marked the frame, and inside several food containers had been torn open. Knelt down and examined the marks. They were not made by any tool she knew. These were claw marks, long, deep, and made by something very strong. She should have called for help. The protocol was clear. Any sign of unknown life forms required an immediate report to Central Command, but had been alone on this ice moon for 4 months now. She was a scientist who studied alien life. This was exactly why she had come here. She followed the tracks. They led away from the shed, across the frozen plain, toward a cluster of rocks near a thermal vent. Steam rose from cracks in the ground there, creating a small area of warmth in the endless cold. As she got closer, she heard sounds, low growls, hissing, the sounds of creatures trying to seem dangerous. Stopped at the edge of the rocks and looked down into a small hollow. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. 3 small creatures huddled together against the warm stone. They were about the size of large cats, covered in dark fur that seemed to shift between black and deep purple. Bright lines of blue light ran along their bodies, glowing softly in the steam. Their eyes were large and golden, and when they saw her, those eyes went wide with fear and anger. The largest one stepped forward and opened its mouth. Rows of sharp teeth gleamed. It made a sound like tearing metal, a warning growl that would have frightened most beings in the galaxy. Claws extended from its paws, each one as long as finger and sharp as a knife. Recognized them from her studies, young ones barely past infancy, but still. In every database, every report, every warning transmitted across the stars, they were listed as one of the most dangerous species ever discovered. Apex predators from a death world, hunters that had evolved to kill anything and everything. Adult had destroyed entire colonies. Ships fled at the mere of their presence. And here were 3 of their young, growling and hissing at her, trying so hard to look fierce. But was a scientist. She looked past the teeth and claws. She saw how thin they were. She saw how they pressed together for warmth. She saw the fear behind the anger in their golden eyes. They were children, lost, hungry, scared children. Did something that would have made any military commander scream at her. She sat down in the snow. The cubs went silent. This was not the reaction they expected. Prey was supposed to run, prey was supposed to scream. This strange, soft creature with no claws and no fangs just sat there watching them calmly. Reached slowly into her coat pocket. The largest cub growled again, louder this time. She ignored it. She pulled out a ration bar, the kind she ate for breakfast when she was too busy with work to cook properly. She unwrapped it slowly, making sure the cubs could see what she was doing. Then she broke off a piece and tossed it gently toward them. The smallest cub moved first. It darted forward, grabbed the food, and retreated back to its siblings. It sniffed the ration bar carefully, then took a small bite. A moment later, it was eating eagerly, making small sounds of pleasure. The other 2 watched. The largest one kept its eyes on, still suspicious. But when she threw another piece, it could not resist. It grabbed the food and ate. Smiled. On most worlds, showing teeth was a sign of aggression. But humans smiled when they were happy, when they meant no harm. The cubs did not understand this. They saw her teeth and tensed, ready for attack. But no attack came. The human just kept smiling and kept offering food. For an hour, sat in the cold. She fed the cubs until the ration bar was gone. She talked to them in a soft voice, not expecting them to understand, just wanting them to hear that she meant no harm. She told them about her work, about her home on Earth, about the stars she had traveled to reach this frozen moon. The smallest cub began to move closer. Its siblings hissed warnings, but it ignored them. It crept forward on its belly, eyes fixed on, ready to run at any moment. When it reached her knee, it stopped and sniffed her glove. Held very still, she could see every detail of the little creature now. The way its fur moved like living shadow, the soft glow of the blue lines along its body, the tiny scars on its muzzle, marks of a hard life already lived. Slowly, very slowly, she reached out her hand. The cub growled, but it did not move away. Her fingers touched its head just behind the ears. The fur was softer than she expected, like touching warm silk. She began to stroke gently, the way she had stroked the cats she grew up with back on Earth. The cub froze, every muscle in its small body went stiff. In its entire short life, no creature had ever touched it like this. Touch meant fighting. Touch meant pain, but this was different. This was warm. This was gentle. This was something it had no name for. Deep in its chest, a sound began, a low, rumbling vibration, a purr. The cub was purring. Its siblings watched in shock. The largest one, the one who had tried so hard to be fierce and dangerous, felt something strange inside itself. It wanted that touch too. It wanted that warmth. By the time the sun began to set, all three cubs were pressed against legs, purring loudly. Their eyes were closed. Their claws were retracted. For the first time since their clan ship had crashed on this frozen moon, for the first time since they had woken up alone with their parents dead and their world destroyed, they felt safe. Looked down at the three small predators curled against her and made a decision. She was not going to report them, not yet, not until she understood more, not until she could make sure they would be safe. She stood up slowly, and the cubs scrambled to their feet, watching her with worried eyes. She smiled again and gestured toward the distant lights of the research station. "Come on," she said softly. "It's warm inside, and I have more food." The one who would later be called Thorn could not understand the human. He was the eldest of the three cubs, old enough to remember the teachings of their clan. He remembered his mother's voice, deep and powerful, telling him what it meant to be. They were hunters. They were the top of every food chain on every world they touched. Other species ran from them. Other species feared them. This was the natural order of things. But this human did not run. This human did not fear. Thorn watched her from across the small room inside the warm building. The human moved around the space doing strange tasks. She pressed buttons on machines. She spoke into devices. She made food appear from metal boxes. All the while she talked to them in her soft voice, using words they did not yet understand. His younger siblings had already given in to her kindness. The smallest one, who would be named Ember, had climbed onto a soft chair and fallen asleep almost immediately. The middle one, who would become Frost, sat near the heating unit, eyes half closed, enjoying the warmth after so many cold nights outside. But Thorn kept watching, kept waiting. He did not trust this strange creature. On the home world, when a larger predator showed kindness to a smaller one, it was always a trick. It was always a trap. You would let your guard down and then the teeth would come. That was how the universe worked. That was what he had learned. So why had the teeth not come yet? Days passed. The human fed them something called protein paste that tasted strange but filled their empty stomachs. She gave them water that was clean and fresh. She let them sleep in a corner she had filled with soft blankets. She never raised her voice. She never moved suddenly. She never did anything that seemed like a threat. And she kept touching them. This was the strangest thing of all. On the home world, did not touch each other except to fight or to mate. Parents cared for their young by bringing them food and teaching them to hunt. There was no gentle contact. There was no comfort given through the skin. But humans, Thorn began to understand, were different. The first time touched him, he had shown his teeth and raised his claws. She had pulled her hand back slowly, not in fear but in respect. She had waited, and then later she had tried again, and again, and again. Each time her movements were slow and careful, each time her touch was gentle. On the fifth day, Thorn let her hand rest on his head. The feeling that moved through him was like nothing he had ever known. It started where her fingers met his fur and spread through his whole body. Warmth, safety, peace. His muscles, which had been tight with tension since the crash, began to relax. His eyes, which had been scanning for danger every moment, began to close. And then came the sound. It rose from deep in his chest, a vibration he could not control. A purr. He was purring like his baby sister, like a cub who had forgotten all the dangers of the universe. For a moment, shame burned in him. He was supposed to be fierce. He was supposed to be dangerous. He was not supposed to make this sound of surrender and comfort. But just smiled and kept stroking his fur, and the shame faded away. There was no one here to see, no clan elders to disapprove. Just this strange, soft human who had chosen to be kind when she had every reason to be afraid. Thorn began to learn new things. He learned that worked with something called data. She spent hours each day looking at screens filled with symbols he did not understand. Sometimes she would talk out loud while she worked, explaining things to the cubs as if they could follow her words. Slowly, they began to. "This is a star map," she said one day, pointing to a display of lights. "Each dot is a sun, like the one that warms your home world. There are billions of them, and around many of them are planets with life. The galaxy is full of wonders." Ember climbed onto the desk to look more closely, her glowing lines flickering with curiosity, laughed and gently moved her away from the sensitive equipment. "You're going to break something, little one," she said warmly. Thorn watched from his corner. He was learning human words now, picking them up than he expected. The human language was simple compared to the complex growls and hisses of speech, but it carried something that speech did not. It carried softness. It carried love. He learned other things too. He learned that was alone here. She had come to this frozen moon to study ice formations and ancient microbes trapped beneath the surface. She had left behind her family, her friends, her whole world to do this work. Sometimes, late at night, she would look at pictures of people on her screen and her eyes would grow wet. Thorn did not understand crying at first, did not cry, but he understood loneliness, he understood missing the ones you loved. One night when sat crying softly at her desk, Thorn did something he never thought he would do. He walked over to her, jumped onto the desk and pressed his head against her hand. Looked at him with surprise, then she smiled through her tears and began to stroke his fur. "Thank you," she whispered, "I needed that." From that night on, something changed between them. Thorn was no longer just a creature she had saved. He was her companion, her friend, her family. The cubs began to grow, not quickly, as took many years to reach full size, but steadily. They learned more words. They learned to understand moods and needs. They learned to help her in small ways, fetching tools or alerting her when the weather outside grew dangerous. And learned about them. She learned that Ember loved to play. Give her a ball of string or a crumpled piece of paper and she would chase it for hours, her blue glow flashing with joy. She learned that Frost was the thinker, the observer. He would sit for long periods just watching, taking in everything around him with those calm golden eyes. And she learned that Thorn was the protector. He would always position himself between and any door, any window, any possible source of danger. "You don't have to do that," she told him once. "We're safe here." Thorn looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. He had watched his parents die in the crash. He had kept his siblings alive through weeks of cold and hunger before finding the warm vent. He knew that safety was never certain. He knew that danger could come at any moment. He would protect his pack. That was what he was for now, not a hunter, not a predator, a protector. And if any danger ever came for his human, it would have to go through him first. The weeks turned into months. Outside, the ice storms came and went. Inside, a strange and wonderful family grew stronger. A human scientist and 3 alien cubs, learning to trust each other, learning to love each other, learning that kindness could cross any barrier the universe put between different kinds of life. Sargent had been flying supply missions to remote research stations for 12 years. He had seen scientists do many strange things. He had seen them keep dangerous samples in their personal refrigerators. He had seen them forget to eat for 3 days because they were too focused on their work. He had once found a researcher who had taught himself to sleep standing up so he would not have to leave his microscope. But nothing had prepared him for what he found on 4. The landing was normal. The walk to the station was normal. He knocked on the door and announced himself on the radio as protocol required. Everything was completely normal until opened the door. "You're early," she said with a smile. Come in, just be careful not to step on." A ball of dark fur shot past his legs, chasing something across the floor, jumped back with a shout. Another creature ran past, this one slightly larger, its body marked with glowing blue lines that pulsed as it moved. "What in the—" He reached for the weapon at his belt but grabbed his arm. "Don't," she said firmly. "They're harmless, well, mostly harmless, they're just playing." Stared, the 2 creatures had cornered their target, a small ball made of wrapped string. One of them pounced on it, and the other jumped on top of the first, and soon they were rolling around the floor in a tangle of fur and glowing lines. He said slowly, "Those are—" "Yes." "The species that destroyed Colony 7. The species that is classified as kill on sight by every military organization in known space." "Yes, but these are just—" "And they're playing with string." Smiled, "They really like string. I go through about 3 balls of it every week." Watched as the smaller finally claimed the string ball and ran off with it, the other one chasing close behind. He turned to with an expression of complete confusion. "I have so many questions." "I know, come sit down, I'll make tea." Over the next hour told him everything: the crashed ship, the dead adults, the 3 starving cubs she had found in the thermal vent, the weeks of slowly building trust, the family they had become. As she spoke, the third appeared. This one was larger than the other two, and it did not play. It walked slowly into the room and positioned itself between and, watching the human soldier with cold golden eyes. "That's Thorn," said. "He's the protective one. Give him time, he'll warm up to you." Did not move. He had read the reports about. He knew what those claws could do to human flesh. He knew that even a young one could kill a fully armed soldier if it wanted to. But he also saw the way Thorn kept glancing back at, checking on her, making sure she was safe. The creature was not looking at him as prey. It was looking at him as a potential threat to someone it cared about. "You really have domesticated them," said softly. "No," replied, "they're not domesticated, they're not pets, they're family." She reached out and scratched behind Thorn's ears. The big's eyes half closed, and a rumbling purr filled the room. Shook his head. "Only a human," he muttered. "Only a human would adopt the most dangerous predators in the galaxy and teach them to purr." Over the next few days, as completed his supply delivery and system checks, he got to know the cubs. It was impossible not to. Ember, the smallest one, decided immediately that he was wonderful. She followed him everywhere, climbing onto his shoulders when he sat down, trying to investigate the tools on his belt, generally making it very difficult for him to work. At first he was terrified of her tiny sharp teeth so close to his face, but she never bit. She only sniffed and purred and demanded attention. "She likes you," laughed. "She's very small to be so annoying," grumbled, but he was smiling. Frost, the middle cub, was more reserved. He watched from a distance, studying him with those calm, intelligent eyes. On the third day, he approached the sergeant while he was eating lunch and simply sat beside him, close but not touching, accepting his presence. Thorn took longer. He watched constantly, tracking his movements, nodding when he went near. But slowly, as the days passed and showed no threat, the big cub began to relax. By the end of the week, he even allowed to give him a brief pat on the head. "I'm," said dryly. Thorn just stared at him with an expression that seemed to say, "Do not push your luck." On his last night on 4, sat within the common room while the cubs slept in their corner nest. Outside, the stars blazed cold and bright through the station's windows. "You know I have to report this," he said quietly. His hands tightened around her teacup. "I know. The protocols are clear, I know what the protocols say." Her voice was steady but firm. "But look at them, they're children, they've done nothing wrong, they just want to live." Looked at the sleeping cubs. Ember had her head resting on Frost's back. Thorn was curled around both of them, even in sleep protecting his siblings. "If I report them," he said slowly, "Central Command will send a kill team. They won't ask questions, they won't wait for explanations, they'll just eliminate the threat." "Yes." Was silent for a long moment. He thought about his duty, he thought about his oath, he thought about the regulations he had sworn to uphold. Then he thought about his daughter, back home on the station where his wife waited. He thought about how she loved animals, any animals, how she cried when she saw creatures suffering on the news feeds. What would she think if she knew he had ordered the death of 3 orphaned children, even alien ones, even dangerous ones? "My report will say the station is secure," said finally. "No unusual findings, no irregularities. The is doing excellent work and requires no additional oversight." Let out a breath she had been holding. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet, I'm going to come back every month instead of every 3 months. Someone needs to keep an eye on this situation." He paused. "And bring more string, you're going to run out." Laughed, and across the room, Ember's ears twitched at the sound. When left the next morning, all 3 cubs came to the door to watch him go. Even Thorn. The big cub stepped forward and pressed his head briefly against Leg. "I think that's a goodbye," said softly. Looked down at the creature that could kill him with a single swipe of its claws. He reached down and scratched behind Thorn's ears just once. "See you next month," he said. "Try not to eat anyone." Thorn made a sound that might have been a laugh. Ambassador had served the Galactic Concord for 200 years. His species lived long lives and believed in patience. They did not rush to, they did not act on emotion. They gathered facts, analyzed data, and made careful decisions. None of that prepared him for humans. The report had come from a scout ship passing through the outer rim. Energy signatures detected in human space. 3 distinct life forms on a moon called 4. The scout had not investigated further. No one with any sense got close to if they could avoid it. But the report had to be addressed. The Galactic Concord had rules about such things, were a threat to all civilized species. Their presence anywhere required immediate response. So had been sent to investigate. He expected to find a colony under siege. He expected to find humans fighting for their lives. He expected, if he was being honest, to find corpses. He did not expect to find a carrying a juvenile in a baby sling while reviewing geological data on her computer screen. Ambassador, the human said, looking up as he entered the station. I wasn't expecting a diplomatic visit. Please come in, would you like some tea? Stood in the doorway, his long limbs frozen, his many eyes blinking in confusion. The in the sling was awake. It was looking at him with those terrible golden eyes. Its tiny claws gripped the fabric of the sling. Its blue markings pulsed gently. It yawned, showing rows of small sharp teeth, and then went back to sleep. That is said. His translator struggled with his tone because the emotion behind it had no proper word. Yes, this is Ember. She likes to be close to me while I work. The sling keeps her happy. The human smiled. The others are around somewhere. Thorn is probably napping in the heating duct. Frost is, there he is. A second walked into the room. This one was larger, moving with the quiet grace of a predator. It looked at, assessed him with a glance, and then walked past to curl up on a soft chair near the window. Frost likes to watch the storms, the human explained. He finds them calming. Tried to speak, no words came out. His translator made a small sound of distress. Ambassador, are you all right? You look pale. Well, paler than usual. Do get pale when they're stressed. You finally managed. You are living with young ones. You have put one in a carrying device for infants. She gets fussy if I leave her alone too long. Fussy. Yes, she cries. Well, it's more of a howl really. Very loud, disturbs the whole station. Lowered himself carefully into a chair. His legs did not seem to be working properly. Across the room, the cold Frost opened one eye to look at him, then closed it again with apparent disinterest. I need to understand this, said slowly. I need you to explain to me how this is possible. Told him the story, the crashed ship, the orphaned cubs, the slow building of trust, the family they had become. Listened without interrupting, his many eyes fixed on her face, trying to find signs of deception or madness. He found neither. The human was simply telling the truth. Among my people, said when she finished, we have a saying. It translates roughly as, some things cannot be, therefore they are not. It means that when we encounter something that contradicts all known laws of nature, we assume we have misunderstood the situation. And what have you misunderstood here? I do not know, that is the problem. Gestured toward Ember, still sleeping peacefully in the sling. Do not bond with other species. They do not form attachments outside their own clan. They certainly do not allow themselves to be carried like infant young. These ones do. Yes, I can see that. The question is why. The answer came from an unexpected source. Sergeant, who had arrived earlier that day for his monthly visit, spoke up from the doorway. Because she was kind to them. Turned to look at the human soldier. Kindness does not tame apex predators. No, agreed. He walked into the room and sat down next to Ember. Woke up, saw him, and made a happy chirping sound. Kindness doesn't tame them. It just shows them that there's another way to live. They chose to accept it. Was silent for a long moment. He thought about the history of human contact with the galaxy. They were a young species, barely a few centuries into space travel. They had no great military power. They had no advanced technology. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no poison, nothing that would make other species fear them. And yet wherever they went, they left strange stories behind them. Stories of humans befriending species that should have killed them. Stories of humans walking into danger to help creatures they had no reason to help. Stories of humans treating every form of life they met as potentially worthy of love. Most species thought humans were insane. Was beginning to wonder if they were simply operating on a level that other species could not understand. My report to the Council, said slowly, will state that the presence on 4 does not represent a threat to galactic security. His eyes widened, really. I will recommend continued observation, monthly visits perhaps by qualified personnel. He looked at, you seem qualified. Thank you, Ambassador. I will also recommend that no attempt be made to remove them from human custody. Stood, his long limbs unfolding with careful dignity. The Council will not be happy. They will demand explanations. I do not have good explanations to give them. What will you tell them? Looked at Ember, now awake and watching him with curious golden eyes. The tiny predator yawned again, showing those sharp little teeth, and then nuzzled against his chest with obvious affection. I will tell them what I have seen, said. I will tell them that the humans have done something unprecedented, something impossible, something that challenges everything we thought we knew about the nature of predator species. He moved toward the door, then paused. The Council has a classification for species that defy conventional understanding. We call them unpredictable assets. Humans have been on that list since first contact. I suspect that after my report, they will move higher on that list. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Made a sound that his translator rendered as a laugh. That depends entirely on what the humans do next. It always does. He left the station and returned to his ship. As he rose into orbit, he began composing his report. He knew it would cause chaos in the council chambers. He knew that species across the galaxy would demand answers, would insist that something be done, would call for the destruction of the before they could grow into a threat. But had seen the way those cubs looked at their human mother, he had seen the trust in their eyes, the love. Some things were worth protecting even if they were dangerous, especially if they were dangerous. 5 years changed many things. Was no longer alone on 4. The research station had grown into a small outpost. Maury scientists had come, drawn by her work and by the strange story that had spread through academic circles. Had been permanently assigned to the station as its security officer. His wife had joined him 2 years ago. Their daughter was now 7 years old. And the cubs were no longer cubs. Thorn stood 8 feet tall at the shoulder when he chose to walk on all fours. Standing upright, he towered over every human in the station. His dark fur had deepened to pure black, and his blue markings blazed like lightning across his body. His claws were as long as daggers, and his teeth could bite through steel. He was, by any measurement, one of the most dangerous creatures in the known galaxy. He was also very careful not to step on toys when he walked through the common room. Uncle Thorn, the little girl shouted, running toward him with her arms outstretched. The massive lowered himself to the ground and let the child climb onto his back. His rumbling purr vibrated through the whole room. She's going to spoil him, said, watching with a smile. Too late, replied, he was spoiled years ago. Ember had grown too, though she remained the smallest of the 3. She had never lost her playful nature. Even now, fully grown and capable of hunting prey 10 times her size, she would chase anything that moved, balls of string, floating dust particles, hair ribbons. She was draped across the back of the couch, watching ride on Thorn's back with half-closed eyes. Her tail twitched lazily back and forth. Frost sat by the window, as he always did, watching the endless ice storms of 4. He was the calmest of the 3, the most thoughtful. He had learned to read human script and often spent hours looking through research data on the computer. No one knew how much he understood, but his golden eyes missed nothing. This was their family now, humans, and living together in a place that had become home. They did not know that danger was coming. The pirate ship entered the system just before dawn. It was a fast attack vessel, the kind used by raiders who preyed on isolated outposts. The crew had heard about the research station on 4. They had heard it was poorly defended. They had heard it contained valuable scientific equipment and supplies. They had not heard about or if they had, they did not believe it. The attack came fast and hard. The station's shields went down under the first barrage. The communications array was destroyed before anyone could send a distress call. Within minutes, the pirates had landed and were cutting through the main door. Grabbed his weapon and pushed behind him, herded the other scientists toward the back of the station. Stood in the middle of the common room, her face pale but determined. Stay behind me, said, all of you. But Thorn was already moving. The massive walked past and stood directly in front of the damaged door. His markings flared bright, pulsing with a light that filled the room. A low growl built in his chest, so deep that the humans felt it more than heard it. Ember dropped from the couch and moved to stand beside her brother. Frost left his window and joined them. 3 apex predators, fully grown, standing between their family and danger. The door exploded inward. 6 pirates rushed through, weapons raised, shouting orders. They expected terrified scientists, easy targets. What they found was Thorn. The first pirate did not even have time to scream. Thorn moved than anything that size should be able to move. One swipe of his claws sent the raider flying across the room. Before the body hit the wall, he was already turning toward the next target. Ember was smaller but no less deadly. She darted between the pirate's legs, her claws slicing through armor and flesh. Her movements were almost playful, like a cat toying with prey, but there was nothing playful about the damage she left behind. Frost moved with cold efficiency, no wasted motion, no unnecessary violence. Each strike was precise, each attack ended a threat. The battle lasted less than 2 minutes. When it was over, 6 pirates lay on the floor, dead or dying. There stood among them, barely breathing hard. Thorn's fur was stained with blood, but none of it was his own. He turned and walked back to, who had watched everything with wide eyes. He lowered his huge head and pressed his nose gently against her hair. The little girl threw her arms around his neck. "Good Uncle Thorn," she whispered, "good boy." A sound came from the ruined doorway. The pirate captain stood there, having arrived too late to join the fight. He stared at the scene before him with an expression of pure terror. 3 fully grown, covered in the blood of his crew. And a human child hugging one of them like it was a giant pet. "What?" the captain whispered. "What are you people?" Stepped forward, her voice was calm. "We're a family and you're not welcome here." The captain ran. He made it to his ship. He left the planet so fast that he nearly burned out his engines. Later, much later, his story would spread through the criminal networks of the galaxy. A warning passed from crew to crew, port to port, about a research station on an ice moon, about humans who had done the impossible. About the who would kill anyone who threatened their pack. After the attack, sat in the common room with a cup of tea that had long gone cold. His hands were still shaking. He had been a soldier for 20 years. He had seen combat. He had faced death. He had never seen anything like what the cubs, no, he could not call them cubs anymore, had done. Sat beside him, Thorn lay at her feet, allowing her to tend to a small cut on his ear. He purred softly as she cleaned the wound. "They protected us," said quietly. "Of course they did, we're family. Do you understand what this means, what they just did, if word spreads?" "Word will spread, it always does," smiled and scratched behind Thorn's ears. "Let it spread, let the whole galaxy know." "Know what?" "That humans don't just make friends, we make family, and our family will do anything to protect us." Across the room had fallen asleep on Frost's massive back. Ember was curled up beside them, her tail wrapped around the little girl's legs. The scene looked peaceful, normal, like nothing in it could possibly be dangerous. But knew better now, he understood what he was looking at. Not pets, not soldiers, not weapons. Family, the most dangerous thing in the universe. In the weeks that followed, reports of the incident spread across the stars. The Galactic Council demanded explanations. Other species sent observers. Journalists and scientists and diplomats all wanted to see the impossible family on 4. But one thing spread than any official report. A saying, a warning. It passed from trading post to station to ship, whispered by those who knew better than to ignore such things. Never threaten a human, you never know what they have adopted. And somewhere on a frozen moon, a human woman sat surrounded by 3 apex predators who would die for her without hesitation. She smiled and stroked their fur. They purred, and the galaxy learned to be afraid. The humans understood that, perhaps it was time for the rest of the galaxy to learn. As ship rose into the sky and disappeared among the stars, stood with her 3 cubs and watched it go, she felt something warm in her chest, hope maybe, or gratitude. Their family had just gotten a little bigger. None of them knew that their quiet peace was about to be disturbed. A ship was coming, and with it would come the first test of their new bond. The cubs looked at each other, then, together, they followed the human through the snow.